Let's have a look at the WiDS Datathon 2024 challenge hosted on Kaggle. So you already have your free Kaggle account set up and have signed up for the WiDS Datathon challenge. Once you have done both of these, you can navigate to Kaggle and be able to peruse the Datathon website. You'd find particular tabs that are related to this specific challenge, and the overview is based on an oncology dataset where you'll develop a model to predict if patients received metastatic cancer diagnosis within 90 days of screening. Of course, bear in mind that this challenge started on January 9th and closes on March 1st, within which time you will have to look into workshops and also be able to form teams. A quick look at the description, and you can see that the dataset has been sponsored by Gilead Sciences. It's a real-world dataset which contains demographics, diagnosis, and treatment options, as well as insurance provided about patients who were diagnosed with breast cancer from 2015 to 2018. As you scroll down, you would find the submission format for the competition. Just a reminder that in this competition, you are able to compete with up to 4 persons on your team, and at least half your team being females. Now, the submissions here have a particular format. If you would notice, as we scroll down, you can see that there are various tutorials and resources that you can jump straight into, in particular, introduction to Kaggle competitions, getting started with Kaggle, as well as specific data science tutorials to assist with the challenge. Of course, you'd see there are various prizes that will be allocated for any of the global teams who reach the top of the leaderboard. Now let's have a look at the specific data that's associated. So as we mentioned before, this data set is based on breast cancer diagnosis, and we are focusing on a prediction task. So as we could see in the description of the data set, this has 39,000 records split into 2 sets, tests and training sets, and we will learn more about these as we go along in these workshops. Now, in these 2 sets, which we will use to build our prediction model, we have patients with characteristics such as age, race, BMI, zip code, diagnosis, and of course, treatment information as seen here, as well as zip codes and air quality data. So the 2 data sets you would see are a training data set labeled train.csv, which is a comma separated value file, and the observed values of the outcome variable being diagnosis period being less than 90 days for each row is provided here. The test data set is where we withhold the observed values of the outcome for each of these rows, and we will use this on our training data set to determine how well our predictions are doing. Now you're probably thinking, what does the data set look like? Let's have a look. Now this page contains a lot of the information on the data. For those of you who are beginners, it may feel a little overwhelming, and that's okay. What we really want to show you is a sense of what real life big data looks like. So our target variable, as we mentioned before, is listed here to indicate whether the cancer diagnosis was within 90 days. And we also have columns, as we will see shortly, which represent the different variables associated with the patients in the data set. As you can see, there are a lot of columns, but don't worry, we'll help you to analyze these and get your predictions done quickly. Now, for the efficiency of the process, we can see here, there is a table that you can actually look at each of the CSV files. So we mentioned before our training set. And as you notice, you can see all the variables, and there are 83 columns within this training set. You can download this CSV file onto your machine, or you can work with it within the Kaggle workspace. We also have a test set, which has similar variables. And of course, as I mentioned before, it does not have the target variable within. Now notice that within these columns, you can see the spread or the distribution of each of the variables. And it's really an important step that we will speak about, where you should explore your data set before you jump into any sorts of analysis. So for instance, if you would like to look at specific variables, you don't have to select all the columns. For instance, if we just want to look at patient race, payer type, patient state, we can look at those specific variables themselves. And you can also see where there are missing values within those specific data. So we have a submission CSV file called sample submission. And this is what you will be submitting for the competition based on your predictions. You would notice that it just boils down to the patient ID and the predictions based on that target variable, as we mentioned before, with the 90-day prediction of cancer. So of course, at this point, it may seem, how do we even do this? Well, we would need some tools. If you click on code, you can get an idea of what it looks like. For a beginner, it may seem, how do I even start? Well, that's not a problem. We'll show you in a stepwise way. For those of you who are intermediate and have an idea of programming, you may find this to be an easier process. If you would like to jump in and see what others on the space are doing, you can feel free to click on code and click on any of these notebooks. Within these notebooks, you can actually see what we call the coding aspect on the back end of how their models work. And you can save these notebooks, copy them, and run them on your own time. In this way, we are all learning from each other, and that's one of the benefits of being on Kaggle. So that's just a quick look at the coding aspect. And of course, we will delve further into this as we go along. Jumping back to the challenge page, you can see there that there has no models yet. Models from Kaggle will be posted here and will be in the public competition notebook. There is also a discussion forum for those of you who have questions, would like to meet up with global team members, and want to see how specific coding works. And this is the most important part for you. When you make your submissions, you have to look at the leaderboard to see where those submissions go in terms of the scoring. Now, of course, you can come up with your fancy team names, or you can compete in a single sense. However, your scores will be based on a metric. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Of course, you should read through the rules regarding how many submissions you can make a day based on your predictions. And bear in mind, you can consistently improve your model predictions as you go along. And that's the purpose of these workshops, to assist you. Team formations will also be on this page, and you can invite persons to be on your team. So in terms of the overview, remember that we are making predictions based on this specific variable in terms of the 90-day predictions of breast cancer. We would also want to bear in mind that we have to look at the RMSE metric, and we'll explain those in our workshops. And this metric will be used to determine how well your model predicts from your data set. I would encourage you to jump into some of these tutorials and resources if you would like further information on using notebooks, and also what exactly is this challenge about in terms of the biological aspects and how we can assist in building models to predict such. Now, the submissions to the leaderboard are evaluated under the area under the ROC curve. As I mentioned before, it's a metric. And that in that metric, you'll be able to see how well your model predicts, and also if you need to make any further improvements based on these predictions. The submission format, as we mentioned before, is a CSV file. And of course, this is how it will look. So as we go along in our workshops, you will see how to create that submission. When you are ready to create it, you will click on Submit Prediction. And of course, you'll be able to put in that CSV file. Of course, there are various ways you can actually analyze the data through notebooks on Kaggle or Google Colab, or you can also look into analysis through automated tools. Some of them are included, like MATLAB, which has a license for persons entering the Datathon, or any other automated machine learning tools for more intermediate and advanced users. So how do we even make a submission or even analyze the data in the first place? Let's jump into looking at how to use a notebook to do this.